Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin. Why are you pointing at me
You remember
already?
when I lectured everybody last week about enjoying it no matter what happens because it could go bad again? Well, it went bad again. So I'm not lecturing anybody this week. You can be mad again.
Yeah, we absolutely can be mad again because that loss to Auburn was not a pretty one, that's for sure. No losses ever are. And we have a lot of questions about that and Sam Pittman, rightfully so this week, so let's get into it. Our first question comes from Hog in Iowa, who says, I like Sam. I just think it's obvious after this season that the players don't really respect him or fear him. This offensive line is truly offensive to watch, and I can't, for the life of me, understand how it got this bad.
I think when you talk about what's wrong with this team, I think there are two things that really, there's a lot of things, but there are two big things. And one of them is that offensive line. And people that are blaming the O-line coach, I mean, do you have amnesia? Do you not realize he was the same guy that coached them the previous 3 seasons where nobody complained about the offensive line? Did he suddenly turn into a stooge who didn't know how to coach the offense? I think what happened is they didn't develop backup people. They improperly evaluated people that were going to have to step in when they lost 3 starters last year and didn't develop them properly and put too much faith in the people they had. And that's just astounding when your head coach is a well-known, well-respected offensive line coach. I still, will, to this day, will never understand how that happened. I talked last week about someday sitting down with Pittman and asking, you know, he probably won't talk to me now after some of the stuff I tweeted. But the fact is, it just makes no sense that he, as good as he is, that he did not see over the last couple of years that they weren't putting themselves in a position to replace the guys they were going to lose. So that's one big issue. The other big issue is he just never seemed to understand what was going on with his own team. And how does that happen? It happens when you don't know things about your team. And if you don't understand this, you might say to yourself, well, if you're the coach, you should know everything that goes. No. Coaches, how much, they're supposed to spend 20 hours a week over there, the athletes, 20 hours a week. I don't know if that's real or not. But there's large periods of time, even in season, where athletes are in a situation where there are no coaches around. Those coaches don't go in those locker rooms every single day. There might be somebody in there occasionally. But there's a lot of times when athletes are just one-on-one with each other. What goes on there? And if there's things going on there that you don't know about, that can be a problem. There can be problems in the locker room that don't, in those situations, don't get addressed. And that's what leads you to going saying something like what he said, which was, I don't know, we worked out the same as we did the week before and everything seemed exactly the same and then it just wasn't the same. That's generally indicative of something going on between those players that nobody said anything about, and so the coaches don't know about it.
And Sam Pittman doesn't know about it, especially being the head. And it's also with football, and you look at kind of the different sports here, but with football especially, you have so many guys on the roster, right? You have so many kind of guys to look after and make sure. That's why you need good assistant coaches. That's why you need people under you that you trust, that you know are going to take care of their groups, their cores and things like that, where you've had so much turmoil this year when it comes to, you fire Dan Enos, you have Kenny Guyton stepping up. There's been a lot of change.
Right.
And I think people like to forget so quickly that there's been, over the past few weeks, there's been a whole lot of change with this program. And maybe there's something with that we don't know is going on behind the scenes.
Okay.
I agree with you there. VB Mark wants to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being absolutely certain to be gone and 1 being there's not enough antifreeze to keep Hades from freezing over before he is let go, how safe is Coach Pittman's job this year?
I'd say it's maybe a 2.
A 2, okay.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to stay. That's what I'm hearing today. And what a contrast from yesterday when there was all kinds of rumors flying around. I know I can only talk about what I talked about yesterday because I was talking to a couple of people that I trust who told me there was a group of boosters that were trying to get together to figure out a way if they could buy Petrino out. And I don't know if you heard that or not.
Buy Petrino out or buy Malzahn?
Malzahn out.
Yeah.
Buy Pittman out.
Buy Pittman out.
I got Pittman, Petrino, all that stuff mixed up. Buy Pittman out. And so when I got into that and started questioning them, they were telling me a lot about what was going on. But the question that never got answered with either person I was talking to is, well, what does Hunter Yurachek think about that? And one guy said, well, I don't know if he knows. And I'm going, well, then he needs to know. You're kind of wasting your time. And I could only conclude that it sounded like these were some of the same people that tried to get Malzahn in here in 2017. The problem, the two situations were totally different. In 2017, you didn't have a real AD. You had an interim AD. So they could pull a fast one, which they did, and tried to hire Malzahn, and he just took their offer and used his agent to get him a better deal at Auburn. This was totally different. You have a sitting AD in place. And the other thing impression I got was, because I asked, was this buyout would only be for Malzahn. They weren't just automatically offering to pay the buyout no matter who they hire. And I knew that wasn't going to fly, because no AD worth his salt is going to say, oh, well, how are you going to pay this guy's buyout? Well, we'll pay it, but you got to hire this guy. Well, no, I don't want that guy. Well, then you got to hire him and you don't get a buyout. So you don't. And just to triple check all of this, first of all, I knew somebody over in Stillwater that had spoken with Christy Malzahn over the weekend. And then I also knew somebody in Springdale that knows them really well. And I talked to both. I was told the same thing. They have no interest in coming back here. I don't know why these boosters keep trying to hire him and thinking he'll come, because they told me that their attitude is they've got a lot of family here in Arkansas. If they came back here with him as the coach, they're going to be subjected to all the stuff that went on when he was here the first time as an assistant coach, only it'll even be worse. Whereas if you're out of state, if you're at Auburn or now UCF, you don't have relatives around there. People get mad at you, you just deal with it. You're the coach. You don't have to worry about what your in-laws think or anything like that, your kids or whatever. And I was also told that Christy Malzahn said that when Gus retires, they are going to move back here.
Oh.
And they're even looking at buying some land so that they can build a house when they get ready to retire. But that'll be a totally different situation, because he won't be in coaching, so nobody will be mad at him. He'd just stay out there where he is and go to the grocery store, and somebody might go, hey, you're that Malzahn character. Oh, whatever.
Whatever.
But, it's not the same thing as if you're the coach. I think that's extremely smart, because when it filtered out that they were trying to do this again, the reaction was almost overwhelming negative. It was because they're smart. They know he's controversial here. They're not coming back here. So all of that was dead in the water. So what are we left with? What were we left with after that? I don't know. What's going to happen with this guy? And then there were all this stuff about there's going to be a press conference at 5 o'clock, and nothing happened at 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the university very smartly issued this press release of the press conference today at 11, or Monday at 11, and then another one Wednesday at its normal time. So all of a sudden you realize what they're saying is, hey, he's going to be the coach here on Monday, he's going to be the coach here Wednesday, and by today, what I was sort of hearing is he's going to be the coach next year.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's true, there could be other things at play. They could be covering this up, and Yurachek could be out privately looking, and either he told Sam and Sam knows, or Sam doesn't know. There's always other alternative possibilities. But the best information I have right now on Monday of this week is that he somehow has a plan that he's convinced Yurachek will work. And when the season is over, they're going to institute this plan, and they'll just put up with whatever. Now, let me just say this. It's going to be a hard sell. You know it is. Who's going to show up for the Florida International game? Who's going to show up this weekend? How many? Is it going to be 30,000, 20,000? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It could be more. But that could be next year if they don't win early. And they're going to have to win games early and keep winning. And remember, that's that new SEC schedule where they're going to play Texas here next year.
Yeah.
So I don't know how early that is. I haven't looked at it. But if you lose that game, It's not going to be like it was in 2021 when you beat them and people stormed the field. So if he stays, Hunter Yurachek, who has a lot of credibility with Arkansas fans, he's going to have some splaining to do if things don't go well early next year. But the problem is in the interim. Yes, you're going to have basketball to distract people. You're going to have baseball to distract people. But there's still going to be talk about football. And what are you going to say? And the real issue, as far as I'm concerned, is people like you and me and Alyssa and the other people that work here, because we're going to have to go out and cover this football program in the off season. We're going to hear stuff in the off season. They're going to obviously they'll probably bring in some portal people. They'll maybe hire some new coaches or whatever. But we're going to have to sit there and try to evaluate, what does this really mean?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, okay, one of the big questions is, how do you rework an offensive line that bad in 1 year? And I'm skeptical, extremely skeptical that you can do it. So they bring some people in. I'm going to have to really pay attention and try to figure out if these guys look. But how do you do that when you're watching? You won't know until the spring game, and even then you might not.
Even then you might not know. I mean, we didn't know after this spring game. They only show us a very microcosm of practice.
Yeah, but one thing I do know is I'm not going to sit here and tell people, this looks great, this looks wonderful. What I will say is, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is the spring.
Yeah.
They're going up against each other. I want to see them play an SEC team.
Yeah.
So I'm not prepared to say this is all fixed. That they've fixed all these problems. That's what we're going to go through, is a real skepticism from
what's happening.
From today all the way through into next year, until there's some reason to believe that the problems they had last year this year won't be there next year.
Well, I think you made the point of that. If Sam Pittman stays, the seat doesn't cool off. The seat is still
It's
warm.
worse.
It'll
start off way worse than it did this year.
Exactly, and so that's what there is going to be a lot of scrutiny on this program. If that's a change that is going into next year.
And Hunter Yurachek better get ready for it too, because there'll be scrutiny on him. He's extremely popular right now because every sport is winning big except that one. But that's the one that generates the money. Mm-hmm. And so,
I mean, it's really hard though, and I thought about this today in this press conference where Sam's getting up there and saying, I'm not worried about my job security and I'm going to be here for a very long time. And those kind of comments, Mike, make you believe. You wouldn't get up there and say that if you had any 10% of doubt that you were going to get fired. So you get up there and say those things with confidence because he and Hunter Yurachek are the two people who know what's going on right now. But it's interesting to hear those things said, and you kind of just go, well, what happens when you look at social media, or the players look at social media, or the recruits look at social media, and they see all these fans going and talking about coaching candidates?
And that's something I never even mentioned in the offseason, starting very quickly in December. Do you lose any more of your recruits? Mm-hmm. Are your commitments? What is your early signing period going to look like? What about the portal? Do you do the same thing in the portal next year that you did this year? Do you get a lot of...
And what if the players are in the portal or wherever, recruits are going, well, we don't know if Sam Pittman's going to stick around. We don't know because his job is still warm, right?
There's just so many questions.
There is, and I feel like you're behind the curve, right? If you're not going to make a decision on that, if you're being wishy-washy about that decision, you're going to be behind the curve because you already have Texas A&M looking for a new head coach. You're already having Mississippi State looking for a new head coach. And by the time it's all said and done, I don't think those will be the only two. So you're behind the curve a little bit.
Yeah.
So I digress, though. We have a lot more questions to get to on this subject. Radhog says the second worst part of Sam's weekend was Jimbo's firing. I just mentioned that there. What big money Razorback supporter would balk at? What, $15 million and the lowly Collies are paying $76 million? That's way too much money. Whew. Do you think this will make the deep pocket supporters pony up?
Well, first of all, this is only relevant if that's what they're planning to do, buy him out. And I don't know, I'm skeptical that that's what's going on. But let's theoretically say that that was an issue. I'm a booster. Now, stop and think about that. I'm a booster, And I sit here and I say, well, look, A&M's willing to spend $76 million to get rid of their guy. I'm going to look really stupid if we're not willing to spend 20 or 15 to get rid of our guy. So yeah, let's get together and do this so we won't look bad. Like those, we don't want to look stupid in front of those A&M boosters. Well, that's not going to happen. You're not going to embarrass people into giving money, are you? I mean, do you really believe that a bunch of Arkansas boosters are going to get together and say, oh, A&M's making us look bad, we better come up with some money? I just don't think they think that way.
I don't think so either. I just think it's not about 76 mil versus 20 mil or whatever it is. It's about, you're looking at two different situations as well, right? And when you're talking about Jimbo Fisher and what he's been trying to do with Texas A&M.
Because there's a lot more reasons to fire Pittman than there are Jimbo.
That's true.
Jimbo had a better year.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So...
yeah, I mean, it's a weird situation for sure, but I don't think...
I'm just answering this question. I don't see a booster out there going, I'm embarrassed. They were willing to give a bunch of money, so I'm going to now too. I just don't think that happens.
Yeah, I don't think that happens either. And you're also talking about Texas A&M has that money, right? They have that money to give. That's why they're so willing to say, look, here you go.
Wait, though. Sarah Huckabee Sanders has just announced today some big thing with an oil company where they're apparently they have like the world's largest, or at least the United States world's largest, or U.S. largest lithium thing in there. She talked about drilling for it. I didn't know you drilled for lithium. I thought you mined for it. But anyway, this Exxon Mobil or something's coming in here, and there's going to be all kinds of jobs and money and blah, blah.
Maybe NIL.
So we might have Arkansas rich guys as a result of lithium to match the rich guys as a result of oil down in the Houston area, so we could match them with NIL money.
Okay,
right?
I like where you're thinking. Maybe.
So maybe 2 years from now we'll have $70 million to get rid of people.
Maybe we will, or maybe we won't. I like your optimism, though, Mike. Blood Red Hog wants to know, is Gus even in the conversation again, or have too many bridges been burned?
Okay, now we get into yesterday, and we talked about it before, the rumors that were going on, and we've already talked about it. It's kind of weird to me that they would still be trying to do this, but again, he doesn't want it. I don't know why they would want it. Somebody told me, this sounds ridiculous, but he said one of the boosters feels really bad because when Gus was here, they brought Gus over from Fayetteville High School and told him, you're going to be the offensive coordinator. And then by the end of the year, Nutt had demoted him.
Yeah.
That was right before he walked out. Malzahn left. Nutt demoted him. And this booster felt guilty for not going over there and putting his foot down and saying, look, we had an agreement, and now you've demoted this guy. I'm not going to allow it. I'll pull all my money.
Oh.
So he feels guilty that he didn't stand up for Gus the first time, so now he's trying to help him this time. That sounds kind of silly to me, too. I mean, you hear all kinds of stuff when you're talking to people that you kind of go, that doesn't make much sense to me. But
I mean, there was a lot of talk about Gus Malzahn yesterday, that name coming up multiple times. There was multiple people saying they had heard the same thing that you did, Mike, and things like that. So, but you just said it. There's no way he would take this job, so it's done. It's the book is closed.
So
all right,
all
guys,
those people
chill.
that got so mad. You still shouldn't be happy about football, but you're not going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, you should be happy a little bit that you don't have to deal with this situation because it's not happening.
It's not happening.
Sherlock Hogg says, how about Petrino, or returning Petrino as OC, getting a new O-line coach and keeping the remaining staff in place? Is there an appetite for that?
Well, he's kind of on the right track. If you start
Petrino is OC?
No, just wait a minute.
Okay.
If you start envisioning yourself as how Pittman would sell Hunter Yurachek on coming back, one of the first things you'd have to do, in my opinion, was say, hey, I'm going to get this really good offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Now, if that offensive coordinator also happened to be a former head coach, because again, we talked about the fact that
they need a former
Barry
head coach,
Odom was on this staff for 3 years, and Sam was fine, and then all of a sudden Odom's gone, and Sam's like, doesn't know what to do about some of these things.
Yeah.
So maybe having a guy he can lean on, and Petrino would be that guy.
Or Dan Mullen, but that's
Dan Mullen, but I don't know if Mullen would take the job, and Petrino probably would because he's about to be unemployed. But
He's about to be
the issue with Petrino is, And by the way, there's another rumor about Petrino, and that is, remember Barry Odom had him hired at UNLV, and then he left and went
to get the,
So apparently they're still close. And the other rumor is that Odom would take the job and bring Petrino in here. Here's the problem with all of that. I'm not sure that the university would sign off on this. Now, you have a different chancellor, different AD, but he basically was fired. Now, you got to look at the technical reason why he was fired. He was technically fired because he hired over other qualified applicants a woman who had ended up he was having an affair with.
Right.
And that's illegal.
Yes.
And they could have been sued over it.
And in the clause of the University of Arkansas's like employment clauses, there is a clause because people were posting it on social media this week. And I'll pull it up for you, Mike, so you can read it. But there's a clause that basically states that because he was fired for that, he can never be rehired for the university.
So I'm skeptical that it would be Petrino.
I don't know, unless you would go into the bylaws at the university and you'd go and change that law for Petrino. I don't see that happening.
It doesn't seem like it would happen.
I could see what you're saying, which is you have Travis Williams, right, as your defensive coordinator. But you need a guy as the OC, kind of like Barry Odom was, who's a former head coach.
Okay, you know who else is out there?
Okay, who?
Nobody's talked about this, and I think he's an analyst at USC.
Who?
Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he's on the staff, is he? He's not.
No, I think he's an analyst. I think
he's
I'll
an
have
analyst.
to check. I don't
think he's an analyst.
I think you're right.
So Cliff Kingsbury's been a head coach, both at the college and the NFL level. And he's a very well-known offensive-oriented offensive coordinator. So if you brought him in here, not as an analyst, but an actual OC, that might be something you could sell even to a lot of fans, because you'd go, whoa, this guy, he was Patrick Mahomes. Okay, yeah, we might get another Mahomes.
I like it. I think that's a good name that I don't know if anyone's brought that up.
I don't know.
I wonder if that's because he's more on the staff of USC than we think.
Maybe it won't happen. I don't know. But I just threw that out there.
I like that.
Because he's been a head coach.
Yeah, if Mississippi State, though, doesn't get Dan Mullen for a second time around.
Well, Mullen is another guy. I'm not sure if Mullen would agree to be an OC.
I don't know about that either. I just have a feel like Sam Pittman, if he is going to be the head coach next year, right, and he is, I think he could sell it to him.
I had somebody call me today and he said, okay, here's what Mississippi State's going to do. They're going to hire Mullen back and say, just kidding, we're sorry,
That's great.
Or I guess he would have to say that. He left them, right?
He would be able to go, just kidding.
I'm sorry, I'm willing to come back.
Yeah, bye. That's funny. Space Hog asks, why on earth do Hog fans keep saying that we need to bring back Petrino? Here we go with another question here. Or Houston Nutt. If we're going to get ridiculous, why not bring back Broyles or Hugo Bedsdick?
Well, the reason these names come up like this is because they're recognizable. And most fans don't take the trouble to really kind of look into the pool out there, the coaching pool, who's available or whatever. So they just grab somebody that's convenient, somebody that's been successful at the past, and it's usually a guy that you've had at your school. So that's what they do. Malzahn, Petrino, Houston Nutt, they've all been here before. They're still around. So yeah, how about that? They won, and it's usually pretty silly when you start talking about
It's
that.
interesting, too, because of the reaction of people when you bring up these names. It's just like, no, we don't want to retread. And I've been seeing on social media, and I don't know if you've seen this today, about people talking about bringing these people back. No, we don't want any ties to Arkansas. We don't want any former ties to Arkansas.
One guy said it always works out bad. I would remind that guy that the winningest percentage-wise coach in the history of the University of Arkansas not only grew up in this state, but he played for the Razorbacks, and that would be Ken Hatfield. Okay. The coach at Arkansas who's had the most appearances in the SEC championship game grew up in Arkansas, played at Arkansas, Houston Nutt. So it is incorrect to say that never works out. Sometimes it does. What I would say is you don't have to have somebody like that. Frank Broyles is a good example, had no ties to Arkansas, grew up in Georgia, played for Georgia Tech, and had never been inside this state until he was an assistant at Baylor and came up here and supposedly looked around and thought, man, this is a great place to coach. So it can go either way. There is no one size fits all on who you hire.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good thing for the fan base to remember as we talk about all these things and bring all these things up. I didn't know that, so that was a mic drop from you there, Mike Irwin. Pork wants to know, would you say the fan base is going to be checked out no matter who the coach is next season? It doesn't feel like there's a realistic hire Hunter Yurachek could make that anyone would have confidence they are the right person for the job, whether it's Sam or someone else.
I think if you hired a new coach, if you hired the right one, you might convince most people. But you're right. Some people, what they do is they have a guy in mind, and so if the guy hired is not that guy, they're going to start off mad. Now, if it's Pittman, what's that? Do you make that acceptable? We've already just talked about that. If you did certain things like brought in a Kingsbury, you'd have to do more than that. You'd probably have to hire a new offensive line coach, even if I don't really think that's what the problem is. If you'd have to do some other things to convince people that, that he can turn it around. But that would be a start. But there's going to be a lot of I think what's going to happen is most people are going to lose themselves in basketball, and that'll be good. Mm-hmm. So I can promise you on this show, from the end of the last regular season football game, we're pretty much going to be about basketball and then baseball. I mean, I'm not saying I won't take any football questions, but I don't want a bunch of them.
No.
I think this show is better off when we don't talk about that for a while.
Well, we're just going to ignore. Well, like you said, what was it, 3 weeks ago when we said it's basketball season now? We're moving on. We're going straight to basketball.
So we have no basketball questions this week.
Hopefully we have some next week.
Well, they haven't played anybody except for the Purdue thing, which is exhibition. They got to play some people. Yeah. They're going to play this Atlantis thing, coming up.
Yeah, that's coming up. So we'll get some questions on that.
I want to understand why we're not going to Atlantis. I've never been to Atlantis. Why can't I go?
Do you want to go?
Well, who's going to send me?
I don't know. We might ask some people here. Do you want to send me and Mike to Atlantis?
I would like to go to Atlanta.
I've seen that
big slide.
Okay, Jacob's looking at also me. He's saying in the back of the camera, me as well. So Jacob, me,
Don't they have that big slide that looks like an Aztec temple? And
they do. You slide. Yeah, it's really cool. You want to? I think that'd be good for us. I think we should go after all the football craziness. We should get to go.
Yeah,
all right.
Be fun.
If you want to sponsor me and Mike going to the Battle for Atlantis tournament, and Jacob as well, let us know. Put it in the comments that you'd like to support our cause. The Bionic Pig says, Mr. Yurachek has most likely already fielded football head coaching interest via third-party contact. My question to you my question to you is, wasn't Coach Musselman interview and eventual hiring kept completely under wraps, and do you foresee this strategy repeated?
It wasn't kept completely under wraps. I was talking to another guy about this earlier today, and he said it was. It was not. Kelvin Sampson was Hunter Yurachek's first target because he was the AD when he was down in the basketball coach at Houston, so they have a good relationship. And he turned to him first. He couldn't talk to him because Houston was in the NCAA tournament for a while, but as soon as they got eliminated on that Monday, Yurachek got a hold of him, and he talked to his people and then came back and told Yurachek, well, the thing I'm interested in is my son. He's on my staff. They gave me a new contract, and in that contract, my son is the coach in waiting. So I'm going to stay here. And Yurachek said, fine. The very next day, I was told by a person I was talking to, well, he's interviewed this guy, Eric Musselman, at Nevada. And I'm not sure how far it's going to go, but yada, yada. And then as time went by, I heard that they brought Greg Marshall in from Wichita State. I also heard there were some boosters that really wanted Chris Beard, who was at Texas Tech. Yeah. And so these names were floating around. What I wasn't told and what I didn't know was that apparently Yurachek pretty much decided from that first conversation with Musselman that he was going to hire him. I didn't know that, but we did know of it. So it wasn't completely in secret. But the question is, could there be somebody out there that he's got in mind and we just don't know about it? I guess. I don't know.
I guess if Pittman's not staying, then yes.
Well, right? There's still this thing that some people believe that Pittman and Yurachek have an arrangement, and he's going to let him coach to the end of the year, and then he'll retire, and then they'll go from there and announce maybe very quickly who the coach is. That's a theory. There's nothing right now that I'm hearing from anybody that suggests that's real.
Yeah.
So I guess in answer to this question, yeah, there could be somebody out there that he's got in mind and he's just waiting to announce it. when football season is over. Most of the time, if you're going to hire a sitting coach, he's not going to, you're not going to do that while the season's in progress anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good situation to talk, going back to my point of you're behind the curve, right? Maybe he's not behind the curve because he's doing this.
One of the big problems with hiring a new coach is once you get to mid-December, you got the early signing period. How long does that coach have to come in here and convince existing commitments not to decommit? Or have your own guys that you can bring in here. I mean, you got to act fast when you hire a new coach like that.
And again, I go back to my point. Why not just rip off the Band-Aid? If you're going to fire someone, just rip off the Band-Aid.
Well, this is why A&M did what they did and why Mississippi State did what they want to be ahead of the curve on this. You've got to do damage control in your own recruiting efforts and in your own portal efforts.
Yeah. Absolutely. Marty Bird's Proxy says, it seemed Auburn had the same or even better success in stopping our run game as Liberty did last year. Did Freeze recreate the same game plan he beat us with last year?
No.
Should we have expected him to?
First of all, it's not the same offense exactly, but I think what they very simply did is they looked at what Arkansas did against Florida, which wasn't very complicated. And Sam Pittman had already said, we're going to simplify. So they went, okay, this is pretty much what we're facing. So they knew what Arkansas was going to run. But I don't think it's a matter of knowing the scheme. I think Arkansas came out dead, lifeless.
Yeah.
And they made Auburn's job a lot easier. So I don't think it was a scheme thing. I think it was a I'm asleep thing.
You think that they said it's a 3 o'clock kick? We're just we're still asleep.
Yeah, we won last week. We'll win again this week. Okay, everything's all right. And then all of a sudden you get hit in the mouth, and it's like, whoa, what happened? We did this to Florida, and they folded.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but they did the opposite. I mean, Auburn did what Arkansas did to Florida. I mean, they hit them in the mouth.
None of it was
early
explainable.
on.
The defense, which has been so good, just got shredded in that first drive, and you're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I mean, it truly looked like they just didn't realize that they were playing a football game that day. Like they went to Razorback Stadium, they were like, oh yeah, football, it's great. And that kind of leads into our next question here just a little bit. S. Giles asks, what's your take on watching cartoons in the locker room at halftime video? I think it's disgraceful.
Well, you say it's not a cartoon.
Well, it's not a cartoon. It's a Christmas classic in the
An
animated
movie is not a cartoon.
Yeah, Polar Express.
Okay.
Listen, y'all should watch it. If anyone has not watched the Polar Express, it's a great movie.
Now, when this first came out, my reaction was, okay, it's a bunch of guys in the walk-on room is a place. The people in that room are not going to get on the field because if you're a walk-on but you might play, you're not in that room. You're out there with the other guys. So everybody in that walk-on room, they knew they weren't going to be on the field. So does it really matter what they're doing? And they're not going to affect anything. But then I started thinking about it. And if there's a bad culture inside the team, there should have been. First of all, the guy that apparently posted it or sent it to somebody and then allowed it to get out, he came in and apologized to Pittman, and Pittman said he was sorry and he accepted that. But here, if I'm Sam Pittman, here's what I do. Even though it's walk-ons, I call every one of those walk-ons in my office this week, and I say, what made any of you think that was okay? And why didn't just one of you stand up and turn that off? And you didn't. So what's wrong with you? Are you living in Looneyville? We don't do that on this team. And I don't know that he's going to do that or not, but that's what should have been done. And it's what I talked again about the culture inside a locker room. Yeah, this is a different locker room. But if the culture is right in the real locker room, it should be right in the walk-on locker room too.
Yeah, I just think, so I have a different take on this just because I feel like, and I talked to my dad about this today, who is a coach, and he's like, if you're trying to get a hold of your team, right, it's a team. It doesn't matter if you're labeled a walk-on or scholarship player, that's your team. And so if we're struggling, if we're up by however many points, fine, you send them to their own locker rooms, that's fine. But the team should be together if they're getting beat that bad. And there should be a serious conversation in that real locker room where the entire team is there. I don't care if you're a walk-on or you're a scholarship player. You should be in that real locker room, the locker room, and everyone should be having a conversation with Sam Pittman talking, right? Yeah. And Houston, like the old Houston Nut videos and things like that, Urban Myers, where, where you see these halftime locker rooms and the whole team is getting coached by Sam Pittman or KJ Jefferson, whoever the leaders are that step up and say, we aren't playing well. And everybody needs to hear that. Yeah. Everybody needs to hear that. You're a team. Everybody needs to hear that. So that's my thoughts on there. WV Hog fan wants to know, what would be Pittman's buyout if he decided to retire and enjoy his life on Lake Hamilton?
That depends on a lot of factors, but it's somewhere between $20 million and $16 million, I guess, if they wait till December 1st.
Yeah, it's $16.1 million if they wait until December 1st to fire him.
And then otherwise it's 20?
Or, well, it doesn't know. It depends on a lot of different factors, but people estimate, right, people estimate it to be about $20 million. Or
and
maybe
so you can
more.
see, I mean, $20 million is a lot of money. It is. I don't care if you're an Aggie and you say, well, we spent 76, you're nuts. You got more money you know what to do with. They don't have that kind of money around here. And so you can see why it'd be very difficult right now for them to pay that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the fans on social media, I saw a really good comment from someone that said, do we think money grows on trees, guys? Because we're not paying the buyout.
And I made the suggestion earlier this week on Twitter that there's another option here if that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's the reason why they would keep him. But if it is, that Pittman could do what he always said he was when he got here. He told everybody on it, it's not about money, the job's not, I don't care what I make, I'm just here to try to win. And so it hasn't worked, and you're not going to stay here just because of money issues. Therefore, you could go say, I'll retire, and I'll take a negotiated settlement. And I just got hit with people, you're so stupid. He wouldn't do that. No, I guess maybe he wouldn't, I don't know. But if you're trying to do the right thing and you really meant it when you said it's not about money, and you want to go retire in Hot Springs and sit out there in your lawn chair by your pig statue and have boats come by and people wave at you, then you could do that and people would say, hey, look, that's Sam Pittman. We like that guy. He did the right thing. As opposed to if you keep your job because the buyout was too high, then they're not going to have the same attitude towards you. And then I had somebody say, well, Erwin, all right, let's see you give up your buyout. Are you serious? I don't have a buyout. Are you crazy?
I don't have a buyout. You could just leave, Mike.
I could walk out this door tomorrow and that'd just be it. My buyout is my 401k and my Social Security. That's it. And I promise you, it's not even, it's peanuts.
Oh my gosh, that's great that somebody responded to you like that. I think it's funny when we talk about that scenario because he came out today and said quite the opposite when he made that comment, because I posted it on my Twitter. He made that comment about, I'm not worried about my job security. Me and Jamie have had a conversation about when I retire and things like that, going to Hot Springs, but I'm not ready to do that yet.
He pretty much said,
I'm not ready to do that yet.
He said he gave the impression it was going to be a while till he did it. So like what, 4 more years maybe?
You wouldn't say that unless you had complete confidence.
I agree with you.
Complete confidence that you are staying here for at least another year. Hot Dogger says, I suspect the players see weakness in Sam Pittman over the way the Dan Enos situation happened. Sam not being assertive and stepping up to address the insubordination issues with Enos earlier in the season happened right before their own eyes.
Yeah, I think that could affect them. Players aren't stupid. They observe what happens. And if they see him accept some of these things, and if it was insubordination, I mean, a lot of people are now rethinking this. Maybe it wasn't so much Enos. But if Enos was being told, hey, you got to move the pocket more, or we got to have fewer plays, not more plays, and he was ignoring that, then the players would say, well, wait a minute, he's not even doing what the head coach tells him to do, which makes the head coach kind of look weenie-like. So, and then you fire him, but you say when you fire him, yeah, he did a lot of stuff I didn't like, and I finally just had to do something. Well, then they might say, well, why did you wait so long? So, yeah, I think his point is well taken. That can rub off on players. That can make them question you as a head coach.
Yeah, I think Hot Dogger could be on the money there. Again, we don't know what happens. This is only what we think could happen or what we think happened. We're not in that locker room. We don't even get to see practices. I think they're closed again this week. So
well, now it's okay that they're closed because we probably don't want to see it.
Yeah, I don't want to see them either. Pat Boat asks, do you think Sam shows enough fire on the sideline? I get he's not Nick Saban, but hold guys accountable for poor plays and effort.
I'm not so much concerned about that because I understand that all coaches are different. Some are musclemen, but not everybody's musclemen.
Some are musclemen.
You don't expect every coach to be running around going bananas. So the fact that he wasn't jumping around and doing that stuff doesn't bother me. What bothered me this year was watching him over and over again with this look on his face like, what just happened? I don't understand. It was the confused look. Like he just saw them do something that he didn't think they would do, and why did they do that, and why didn't he know they were going to do it? That's the body language I didn't like.
Absolutely. I think there was too many times this season where Sam literally, they would cut over to him and he'd be like flabbergasted. And you'd go, why does he look like that? What is happening?
And he admitted it. I mean, he's too honest for his own good, but he admitted he didn't know why they play. He said everything looked the same, and he was sitting there watching it, and he couldn't figure out why they were doing what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, Sam chooses when he gets really mad, too. I mean, because I've panned my camera over to him, and just because the broadcast doesn't always show him, I've panned over to him. He can get pretty feisty. He can get pretty fiery. I mean, not Muscleman level. There's Muscleman level, and then there's everybody else. But Mousetown wants to know, how could Pittman not see what was coming in the Auburn game? His players went right back to where they were going into the Mississippi State game, yet he said there were no warning signs. Seriously?
Okay, again, this gets back into a little bit of what I was talking about before, which is lack of leadership inside the team. John McDonald, I was talking to him years ago. He'd started to win national championships, but he won a whole lot more after that. But I went over to him because I said, nobody else on this camp, Frank's the only one that's got a national championship. Nolan hadn't won one at that point. And I said, you're the only guy here that's won one. You got a bunch of them. I said, do other coaches come over here and ask you what your secret is? And he said, no. And I said, well, that's dumb. I said, I'm here. I want to know what your secret is. And he said, it's not so much me, it's the guys that I put in charge of leadership in my program. He said, I've got upperclassmen type guys that I trust. And he said, they're not always the best guys on the track, but they're good. They maximize whatever effort the ability they have. But he said, they tell me when there's a problem in that locker room. He said, they hear things that I don't hear. They see things that I don't see, and they have my permission to either address them when it happens, or if they address it and it doesn't help, they can come to me and I will act. And I give them that trust. And he gave me an example of a hotshot guy they brought in. I don't know, might have been a half miler or whatever. He was a JUCO or something. He was supposed to be the best out there, and they brought him in. And he was a problem from day one. He was all about him, and he wasn't doing what the other guys did, and he wasn't working out right. And right off the bat, some of these locker room leaders went to him and said, look, we win national championships here. We're not going to win with somebody like you doing what you're doing. We're not going to allow you to do this. And he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, we're just telling you, you got to get with the program. And he didn't. And he said, they came to me and told me what the issue they were dealing with, and he said, I called the guy in and said, you're off the team. We'll honor your scholarship for the rest of the semester, but then you need to go somewhere else. Wow. And the guy couldn't believe that he was just doing it based on the word of these guys, but he said, that's the kind of trust that I had in them. And I want to give you another example from my own life. And I may have talked about this before, but I was in a football game right before halftime. We had enough time, they'd called timeout, we had enough time to run one play from the 1 yard line, and we desperately needed to score. And the coach sent in that play. The play involved our fullback, who was a sophomore and fairly inexperienced, carrying the ball off tackle and scoring. He started boo-hooing. And we're like, what is wrong with you? And one of our senior captains, a guy named Kenny Palmer, walked over to him and said, what are you doing? And he said, I don't want you guys to hate me, and I don't think I can score, and if I don't score, you're going to be mad at me next week and for a long time after this. Just let somebody else carry the ball. And he looked at him and he said, you see those guys over there? That was the defensive guys that were trying to stop him. He said, they're not your problem, because in about an hour and a half, they're going to get on a bus and go back to where they came from. But I will still be here on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. And if you don't score, I will whip your butt every day after school. You got that? And the guy goes, I got it. He put his helmet back on and he scored. Now, our coaches never knew that happened. And they had no ability to influence that because they're on the sidelines. This is a problem that's happening on the field that only involves players. But we had a senior leader that stepped up and solved the problem right there. This is what all coaches have to have. How many times did you see KJ Jefferson chewing somebody out on the field this year? Any of those offensive linemen? Anybody that screws up? I didn't see it. I didn't see anybody doing it. What is up with that?
Yeah. I mean, but that's huge, though, because you'll see it in a lot of other sports, too. You'll see it in basketball when a guy comes off the court and they're getting chewed out by either Musselman or another player on the team.
Another player on the team.
Devo will chew out some of those guys. Devo will get mad.
That is a key.
It is.
It is important in all teams because out there on the court or out there on the field is another place where the coaches aren't there. You're out there with them.
Yep.
And you are the one that has the ability to influence that, and they have to respect you. And if you've already set the ground rules, hey, bub, I'm an upperclassman. You do what I say or else, then they listen to you.
Oh, they do.
And I think what's wrong with this football team is you don't have hardly anybody like that. You've got some guys that play hard. I love Nudie. He just keeps playing hard. I'm not going to criticize people like that, but you have to do more than that. You not only have to do your job, when somebody's not doing their job, you have to step in.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right because those leaders, and I've seen it happen time and time and time again, where they nip things in the bud, and you would never know as a coach.
You stop it before it turns into a problem.
My dad has told me about times where he's like, I had no idea the team was going through that because my leaders nipped stuff in the bud.
Yeah.
My leaders went and dealt with the problems.
And John said, that's what I wanted.
It's good. That is a huge, huge part of winning teams. We have a couple more questions to get to on the show. Dag Nabbit says, I feel like giving some players NIL money while others do not get it is killing college football. It seems to me that a mid-tier team with minimum NIL money in the fan base would be better off if it made sure every starter got around the same NIL money.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I've been told that there was a problem on this team with that. There were some players that went, wait a minute, a few players on this team are getting all the NIL money and what are the rest of it? And think about this. Let's say I am one of those leaders and I'm getting $350,000 a year and I go up and start chewing out some guy that's getting 10. Yeah. He's got a tendency to look at me and go, shut up. You give me your money and then I'll listen to you.
Yeah, right.
So NIL has created a horrible issue, and everybody has it, and different teams, I guess, deal with it in different ways. But I've said this over and over again, the only way to equitably do this is to make these student athletes at all schools employees, part-time employees of the university, and they all get the same amount of money off of the NIL pool. Whether it's $25,000 or $30,000, they're all getting the same. Now, I've heard nothing to indicate that's what they're going to do, but sometimes the easiest solutions are the ones that are ignored. Because everybody says, oh, we can't do that. Why can't you do that?
And I may be off base with this, but I remember a story coming out, maybe it was last year or the year before that, about it wasn't I don't remember who it was, I'll have to look it up, but I believe there was a time where there was a high-paid NIL quarterback that said, oh, I gave some stuff to my offensive linemen because they deserve more love, and he gave them like presents and things like that, and he used his NIL money
would help
to pay for those things because he recognized.
Yes.
And I have to go back and look up which quarterback it was because he said, he was like, yeah, an offensive lineman on the team went, yeah, he bought us all like Xboxes with his NIL money because he knows that we can, and it was a nice way of caring.
Sure.
You see KJ Jefferson walk around in Louis Vuitton and you go, he could buy his offensive lineman some Xboxes. I don't know if that would help, but it might. Razor Alex 88 says, I was wondering if we'd have a question from Razor Alex 88 this week. Our Bull hopes went the way of Old Yeller, but it so happens that I'll be in San Diego during the Holiday Bowl, and my friend and I are very tempted to get tickets to that. Should be interesting experience to go to a Pac-12 and ACC matchup. Still representing our piggies, though.
He's a different guy, man. This is a different. Most fans are in such an angry state right now. The last thing they would do is go to some other football game and watch two other teams and still say, "Hey, it's football."
I hope I see Razor Alex, or if I see the only one in the stands with Arkansas gear on, I know that's Razor Alex 88.
Yeah.
I believe it. That's going to be him. Enjoy yourself, man. Enjoy San Diego. And our last question of the day is from Edward Clutch, who wants to know, saw where both the men's and women's basketball teams are playing in North Little Rock on the same Saturday in December, but the women play at noon, the men at 5. My question is, why not schedule this as a doubleheader and let the women play in front of a packed house?
Okay, the explanation I got on that is they need a certain amount of time between games to clear the arena, clean it out, and just sweep up, get it all clean again, and get ready for the next game. And the other thing was they were also worried, no matter how you do this, if you have men's game first or the women's game first, that you might tend to cause a problem where the women sort of know that everybody's kind of showing up for the men. Well, I mean, it could happen.
I don't think that's a problem.
Well, what do you mean? If you've got 17,000 people in the stands and that game's over and you come out and start warming up, you're the women, and you just see people leaving, and the next thing you know, there's two.
Well, if you're saying the men play first.
Yeah, but
have the women play first.
Okay, the women play first, and there's nobody there, and then toward the end of the game, you start seeing people show up.
Well, then they catch the end of a good women's basketball
That would be
game,
the better
maybe.
way to do it, but that's just all they're saying, that it would kind of make one feel bad.
Well, then you should go look at the entire D2 model, which is this model right here, where they play on the same Saturday. The women play first and the men play next. It's always been that way in D2. I don't know a time where it's not been that way, because I've always watched my dad's team play after the women play, and I've shown up, and sometimes you get a real good ball game at the end there. And
yeah,
you get
the
to
difference is you're not drawing 18,000 for a D2
Well,
game.
you're not drawing 18,000, but the model is the same. The women have no problem with people showing up at halftime getting ready for the men's game. They watch both games. They get to watch.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that's a weird explanation there. I think they should just look
I thought
towards
it was okay, but whatever.
Okay, well, I agree with Edward Clutch. It kind of is kind of like a doubleheader-ish with 12 and 5. If you want to watch a whole day of basketball.
Because a 12 o'clock game's over, what, 2:30?
Yeah, so it's not, there's too much time there. Maybe it should have been a little closer. If I'm scheduling it, you schedule a little closer and you just make people pay for 2 tickets. You just say, hey, you get to see both games with 1 ticket. There you go. How's that? But that's if I'm AD. I'm not AD. I don't have those decisions, and that's why we do Ask Mike, and we are not in charge of things.
I'd like for you to be the AD and keep Pittman, and then just let people yell at you for a year.
Can you imagine? Oof.
Yeah, they'd be calling you up on the phone every day, and you'd be on the phone. Yes, I understand. Okay.
I would be on the phone for a very long time. You'd be like, Courtney, we need to do Ask Mike. I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm talking to another Razorback fan.
That's mad at me.
Anyways, that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.